short introduction for Benny here. Most of you all probably know Benny Dean. He's going to be doing our program tonight, and he's also our Vice President, which we're real thrilled he's our Vice President. Benny has been very active in the Eudora community and volunteering for over 50 years now. Many of those years spent not only on the Eudora City Fire Department, but also with the Eudora Township Fire Department. And he also served as Chief of the Eudora Fire Department. And the Lumberyard Fire in 1990 was devastating. It was the largest fire in Eudora's history. And it took some truly heroic efforts to contain the fire, to prevent it from spreading to other homes in the region. There were no fatalities either, I believe, which was that in and of itself very fortunate as well. So they really did a heck of a job containing that fire, and that's what Ben's going to kind of talk about a bit tonight. So with that, please welcome Benny Dean.
With all that said and done, I don't need to be up here. Where were you? Anybody here in 1990? A whole bunch of you? Several? Where were you on Saturday morning about 3 o'clock?
Oh,
Okay. We have 2 or 3 I know firemen that Jerry Nice back here, Roger Brewers, so on around. I can't identify y'all from here, but it was a good situation. But let me back up a little bit and try to bring you up to date of why I was there. I joined the Eudora Fire Department in 1965, and I mean a green rookie, right along with everybody else in the volunteer fire department. Shortly after becoming a member of the fire department, we got a burnt down the theater in town, set right back here, the next building over. We had no coats, no hats, no boots. You know, a theater has them big glass doors, you know, well, I didn't know what else to do, so I was holding the door while 2 or 3 firemen went in. And pretty soon, bump, 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 here they all come back out on their rear. It blowed. Oh. And if that glass doors hadn't been open, we might have had a few fatalities.
Don't get blowed out the door.
Eddie was there. He was one of them that sort of got his britches skin on the concrete. But it was hilarious at the time, but that was one tremendous big building, and it went down. But anyway, I took my basic training locally through KU. I had high-rise fire instructions through the, I call it Topeka Fire Academy. I think it's Topeka Fire School, or their training center, let's put it that way. I went to night school to get my college accredited course in fire administration. In about 85, 7 counties or 7 areas in Kansas was selected to proofread the manual on wildfire fighting. And Eudora City Fire Department was one that was selected. So I read their books, I had the manuals, I had some idea of what it took to help control wildfires, according to the manual. Don't believe the manual. Nothing ever goes right. I mean, they had scenarios of having like 5 bulldozers and 2 airplanes and 4,000 men, and you had to feed them, water them, care for them, and all this. You see on TV what it's like. It don't always work. Well, taking that scenario, we trained on Eudora Fire Department to this lumberyard down here. We did it regularly. I mean, we knowed where we were going to be if that thing ever burned. And we had no intention of ever knowing it would burn. Just like any, but it was the best place we could go, and had a couple of good hydrants to work off of. And lo and behold, it burned. September 1st, we got the call after midnight, which to me tells you it's arson fires most of the time. Not all the time, but a high percentage of fires after midnight are arson. So at the time, I didn't really care. I was the first fireman on the scene. The building was unbelievably involved in fire. It takes approximately a half hour to 45 minutes for a 2x4 to burn into. The north side of that building was gone. So it had been burning for a couple hours. But with all the lumber and everything inside, it did make one heck of a fire. I got some quotes out of the papers and some that I could remember, but there's 2 wood frame buildings. I'm going to get over here on this one. And, have you got that one on?
Yeah, just tell me
this
when
one?
to.
No, okay, let's stop there. Let's
Right
back
there.
up to that one. That's the 2 owners. They took over in about 1963. And this person here, Keeker, is passed on. This is Mr. Harris. He still lives in Lawrence and was beneficial in providing us with this more aerial view here. We've tried to figure out when it was made. He didn't know, but we're thinking about after 1977, because there's 2 buildings that's still up here that are not there now, that was later taken out. So that's how we tried to determine the age of what that is. But these 2 fellows were pillars in the community, and you know, they knowed everybody, and they run a good business, and everybody went there.
What are their names?
This is Mr. Keeker, and this is Mr. Harris. And this, well, they were the newest merchants in town, and probably, this says 66, but I think they were there in 1963. But anyway, that's maybe when this was made. Next, you got another one on the building? Well, yeah, that's the building. And they had 2 wood frame buildings here. You'll have to look later, but that's in this one, the 2 wood frame buildings. They had the metal frame building behind. They had 5 full-time employees. And they had, I think, somewhere I wrote down, I'm going to have to go to notes, bear with me. I wrote down what they had in trucks. They had the 2 main buildings, and the office was in there. The office is right here. This was original, this little piece right here. That chimney still stood after the fire. But the rest of the building was built on a little later. They had, in this building, was 5 2-ton trucks loaded with material to go out in the morning. They had an 18-foot flatbed with hydraulic booms, and they had 2 forklifts, all pointing this way to go out that building in the morning. That's where the fire was. It was just a no-win situation to a point. And we lost everything in this building and the next building here, this one and this one. I'll get into why here in a minute, I hope. We had 7 fire departments called in. Eudora, of course, Eudora Township, Sunflower, the City of Lawrence, Wakarusa, Willow Springs, and Baldwin City. Like I said, I was the first one on the scene. When I left my house on 12th Street, it looked like the whole north end of Eudora was on fire, because it was, in a sense. Yeah, I mean, it lit the sky up like daybreak. Talking with the city fire chief, McSwain, later on, he said he thought Eudora was burned. He even come down, because his, men called him, told him that they were having to leave town. And he said he looked out, he said he never seen such flames in his life. They were just unbelievable. I think there were 48 firefighters. Now, like I said, I've had paper training in scenarios of how to displace people and handle this and that, and set up your triage centers. For a volunteer, and you have to say volunteer, it was a nightmare for the first few minutes. Pardon it, it was like a Chinese fire drill. If you've ever been to one of them, you know what it's like. But anyway, the Baldwin City was maybe one of the last units coming in, and that, well, I get ahead of myself, but anyway, they enlightened us on some information, but anyway, I took some quotes from the paper, and it says here that our men put up one hell of a firefight. They wouldn't back down. For volunteer firemen, you're gonna have to pat each one on the back. The north end of the lumber yard was totally involved. A fire hydrant at 6th, which we got here, 6th and Maple. This is Maple, but that block is not ever open. The hydrant was right here. It was so hot, we couldn't touch it. Roger Brewer was coming with the township truck, I think then. We were trying to hit that hydrant and couldn't. We backed it all the way across the main street of town here to, 6th and Elm? I think 6th and Elm, and he stayed there with that truck all night. To get to that hydrant is just impossible. We set up triage right here in this yard after we set up an aerial gun trying to cool us into that building. And the building was caving in. Mrs. Kazmaier lived here, Mr. and Mrs. Kazmaier. They were afraid it was going to cave out into what would be Maple Street, and that would entail our house. It was so hot, flowers in the window of Mrs. Kazmaier's house here wilted, scorched. And like I said, we were trying to set up here, and we did get the aero gun set up, and that made a world of difference because we was able to start cooling the area. Mr. Kazmaier had been trying to spray his house with a water hose. And we got called at 3:15. Most all the fire departments were in place within 20 minutes. I couldn't believe how fast those people come. We thought we had it cornered, not cornered, in control. Right? When you look at these, well, there's a little bitty building right in there. Is there another one you can flip up? Might have it on there. Yeah,
There it is.
yeah, okay. This is the corner of that little building. But this is how these trucks were loaded, and this is what was out in the yards. I mean, like I said, we pre-planned, we thought we were smart, we thought we knew what we was doing, but when that burnt, you didn't have a chance. But anyway, what I was getting to is this little building, this area, these are made elsewhere at another time. This was all covered with standing rolls of tar paper. Felt tar paper, roofing. I mean, the whole area, all around this little house and everything. Now, what really got good points there was there's a 350-gallon gas tank in the middle of it. Well, like I said, we got the call at 3:15. 3:30, that tank blowed. There was no way of getting to it. We got another one up there of the next building. Yeah, that one. That little building that's right there. But this area in here, all around it, and I think that was a scale house that originally they used to weigh trucks with. At the turn of the century, probably. That was all enclosed there with the tar paper. When that blowed, Baldwin City was coming into the city limits of Eudora, and they said they could see it, and it looked like it went 100 feet high. Well, when our fire at this building was the first one really giving us a problem, we think we had it maybe where we could corner it later. But when this blowed, everything took off. We lost it. We had to go into what we call a defensive mode for sure, because that went over, and we think that's what set this building on fire, and either the embers or the heat, either one could have done it. That is, well, all the way across this area here, you can see how far it is, a couple hundred feet. It was unbelievably hot in there. And this picture, when it was made, there were a bunch of walnut logs in here. If you guys remember Fred Stewart?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he's cut logs and timber, and they put them on cars and hauled it out. But anyway, when that tank blew, it ignited all of that tar paper, roll roofing. I mean, it was just just like starting over square one again. You just didn't have a chance. Eudora, the city of Lawrence set up over here. City, Eudora Township was on a hydrant way back over here. Sunflower set up on their a hydrant right here and laid hose in. Baldwin City, when they got here, that was just taken off. Baldwin City tried to save that train depot. And it's getting to be a lost cause. Old dry timber, and it was stored with paint. The lumberyard was using it for tile, floor tile, paint, things of that nature. They had rented it or leased it. And like I say, when everything just really exploded on us again, they lost the frame building here was the original office. You can see the different color roof. It still shows in here that they lost 5 trucks, the 18-foot flatbed and the 4 forklifts. They were all loaded, they were full of gas, they were ready to go out when the doors opened in the morning. There was a vault, this right in here, even this one, you can see the little chimney standing. Have you got the other one? It was the old, well, might be getting ahead of it there. Flip up one more and see if it comes up. No, that's the load. Go one more. Yeah, well,
I'll find the wall. We can go
okay, there it is. That was built in the original building.
What was it made out of?
Brick walls, though, about 18 inches thick. And this was a chimney where they used to use original heat in the building. In fact, they probably still used it. Nothing in that vault burnt. They had some ledgers dated back into, I think it's 18-something. Some of the first ledgers they come up with. They were still safe. All their books in here, if you look, well, you can't see too well, but anyway, one of those are laying right in here. There's a bunch of file cabinets. They were all burnt down, of course, you know, but all their other records, main records were in there. I think some computers, anything like that was stored in there for some reason that night. But anyway, that did not burn 3 days later before it could get in. It got that hot. And go up to see if you can get the one that's got Mr. Harris and Mrs. Vendette in it. Yeah, that one there. They're looking over later, and I think, is that the vault maybe standing behind them right here? This was made about 3 or 4 days later. And like I said, all they could do is start compiling losses there. And there was I called it arson squad, but that's the wrong name to use. But the county has a fire investigating crew. It was headed by Larry Stimmerman out of Lawrence Fire Department. Also Dick Rosenbaugh from the State Fire Marshal's Office was called in. And we put in there, asked that Kenny Massey, who was a acting police chief at the time. They sort of helped set it all up for the future investigation. And Mr. Trober, well, I have to go back to this one. He lived up here at the time. I think he had a rent house right here. The windows in it got so hot and it was cracking when the fire department showed up. And that I saved that house is because they laid a water curtain on it. They went into this, like I said, we had to go into what we call a defensive mode. And to start protecting, because when that tank blowed, it just took everything. And we sent one city truck around here. There was some, I guess we call them city barns now in there. That city truck went around there and stopped it from getting to the barns. They were hot, but they started a water curtain. Yes?
Could I ask what a water curtain is?
A stream of water in the air, fans out this way.
Okay.
And It's like curtain, except it's out of water.
Okay,
Sorry about that term.
that's all right.
These guys back here probably know what, should know what I was talking about.
And when you say you go into defensive mode, that means you're no longer trying to put that fire
No.
out, but you're trying to protect
We're
everything
trying
around
to
it
stop
from
it
the fire.
around it, yes, a defensive mode. We had no other choice in a sense,
Yes.
because we had the houses over here. This is the township barn for their maintenance equipment, and originally started out as their fire station till it got out south. But these doors on this side right here was the fire station. Doors on this side right here were, on the street side was the maintenance crew. Right, Jim? Is that where how it's set up?
Yep,
Something of that nature, okay?
we survived.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody survived. But Mrs. Kazmaier told me later her clock quit working at 20 minutes after 3. Well, we were called at 3:15. And like I said, she would have been across the street or the alleyway right here.
Across the alley.
That right there. She went to call the fire department and there's no phone line. This Mr. Krober lived up here. He went to call, no phone. Mr. Golf lives here, the second house. His phone didn't work. And that's the only way they got a phone call out to us. And we had, like I said, we had 48 firefighters in there and a triage set up. Chief McSwain, of course, from Lawrence had to come down to see how his men were doing. I can't blame him. And I was in triage, and he sat down there. I told him not to sit down. He said, why? I said, they're gonna make you drink orange juice. They did. Some little lady come up, and she stood there till he drank it. But somewhere around 3:30, thereabouts, I called dispatch on our radios and told her, I says, we need water. Well, that blew her mind. She says, don't your hydrants work? I said, no, call my residents and tell them we need water. Well, she still, I don't think understood it, but she called my residents. I think everybody in town showed up with a jug of water or orange juice, grape juice or something. I think they opened the grocery store. I never see so many bottles of Gatorade in my life. I mean, they stacked it. And if you come over and sit down, you had to consume something or they wouldn't let you back. But anyway, some of the writings in the papers from me and my statements, which I tried to make very few, the fire was so intense in that area that we couldn't let a fireman stay in there over just a few minutes. 5 minutes, we were dragging them back out. We had no injuries except one for smoke inhalation. And out of the 48 there, I thought that was great. But the one dumb one for smoke inhalation was me. They took me to triage and stowed me down. They poured water out of my boots. You were just, every fireman there was sweating so badly and drinking everything they could to keep from being dehydrated. And the firemen that are still here have been there. They pretty well know that that's what it takes. And before I even forget it, Jerry Nice, you're back there. I had him up here on the corner, right out here, directing the fire trucks. And he sent them to where they're supposed to be at the right times, because they did work. And I know he sat up here wondering what was going on, but when they'd come in with a fire truck, he knew about where to send them. And he knew where the hydrants were, and that helped 100%, was getting those trucks in the right places at the right time. And like I say, you think you know what you're doing as a volunteer, but when it hits you in the face, you get your eyes opened in a hurry. And there's not much else you can do besides, like I said, you go into that defensive mode and you hope for the best. But anyway, we lost the train depot. Is there another one in there on that depot?
Before. And there are no pictures that exist of
That's
when
right.
the fire was actually
We were too
going on.
busy fighting fire, I guess. We didn't take any pictures till afterwards.
Phones back then.
Yeah, that one. That's about the way it looked at the time of the fire, before the fire. Afterwards, this pole right here gives us a lot of trouble. It was leaning out over the railroad track. So we stopped the trains from about, 3:30 on to about probably 4:30 before we let the trains through. And dispatch called about every half hour saying, trains are backing up. When are you gonna let them through? Trains are backing up. I said, so what? We had to go in afterwards and take this pole out and try to, get it where trains could come through. And when they did, I thought they were rubbernecking myself because they come through about 2 miles an hour, and I think they were gonna stop and look and see what burned. But anyway, they come down, their little schedule got over, everything come back to normal around 5 o'clock. So I figure from 3:30 to 5 o'clock, it either burned itself out or we put out what was left, one or the other. Now, we had a committee formed out of this county fire investigating squad. It was disbanded September the 12th. And I think if they would have probably worked just another day or two, they might have got some information to convict somebody. But as far as I know, nobody was ever convicted for the fire. Can you back up to one of the trucks? Fire, well, that's the city of Lawrence truck there. Yeah, well, right there, is that the trucks? Yeah. Right up over the hood of this truck, see how it's burning in? Gasoline or some flammable liquid had been poured right up over the face of this truck. Right up over the face of this truck.
And
So-
how can you tell that after everything's all burned up?
It leaves a trail.
He's Benny.
It will leave a trail.
Leaves a trail.
It will leave a burn pattern.
Okay.
That's why, well, wherever the liquid went, it will leave this is where a lot of people, what should I tell them, chief? They get convicted on the arsons. If you pour gasoline along this floor, it'll burn just that gasoline. And it leaves a burnt mark. And we've had a couple of them in town. But anyway, this committee that was formed through the county had 3 officers from Douglas County Sheriff's Office, 3 officers off the Lawrence Police Department, 2 firefighters off of the city of Lawrence Fire Department, 1 officer off the Eudora Police Department, 1 officer off the University of Kansas. This committee of approximately 10 people put in 275 hours of investigation. And these trucks were pulled out and taken over here to this building that is the city property and kept for several weeks while they went through all this stuff. And they played 20 questions with me, of course, and everybody else, even the property owner. It has to be. And, there's not much else you can do. You gotta start at square one and ask everybody. Because they asked me, every question they could think of, I guess. Which we tried, you accommodate them, but they didn't come up with the right answers to convict anybody. I do appreciate those firemen that was there at the time. They stayed on the scene. They didn't back off. I think, Roger, you stayed up on, 6th and Elm for hours up there. The firemen the next 3 days run shifts of 2 hours apiece around the clock to watch for hot spots and protect this place in here. Back here is the house that it was starting to smolder when the fire department got there and put water on it. And that was part of the defensive mode, is you just went into protecting the surrounding area. But anyway, the office building of this portion was built in about 1868. The depot was built in 1861, thereabouts. So it was 2 of the very oldest buildings in town, and probably the backbone of some of the businesses. The depot, I think it shut down about 54. As a kid, small kid, I went down and watched them run the telegraph. That's where, that was just fascinating to get in there. As Sid Simons was a telegraph operator, and he was probably one of the last that was here. This is one of the older photo, well, it says 1912 when that was made. And this was probably one of the last pictures. This is a painted one here, but there is a printed one to that, which I have one at home at, of the Eudora Lumberyard, just exactly like that. It's painted right off of it. But you can see what it done during the years past, here to here, to a pile of rubble. But, like I said, I think as far as a volunteer fireman, you couldn't ask for probably any more out of them. And as far as my knowledge and everything, to come in at 3:15 in the morning, tell them you got 45 or 48 firefighters out there, what are you gonna do with them? It opens your eyes in a hurry. That, you know, you can do all the pre-planning you want, but if it don't follow what you have on a piece of paper, it ain't worth a darn. Any other questions? I'm about covered it, I think. Is there any other pictures on there we haven't showed?
Yeah, there's
Hit a couple of them.
a few more of the aftermath here.
Yeah.
Really,
Well, like I said, I think this one's sitting a large truck there, and I can't tell what's in there. Is there one in there, the Bill Hadle, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, there's Bill Hadle, he was on the fire department. That's the vault still standing there behind him, I think.
Wasn't that lot to walk out in? Was it still
Yeah,
locked?
it's an alleyway, yes, but that's why we stayed there for, I think, 24 hours around the clock. But, I think his daughter was taking a picture from way out here in the road, and, that was not too far in the fire scene itself. Because if you look across, there's the stop sign on the corner. So he wasn't in very far.
And the township barn is
Yeah,
there
this
too,
is
isn't
the
it?
township here. There's a maintenance shop, is what that is, or was. And they had equipment in there, but I don't think there was any major damage to anything there. I mean, once we went in defensive mode, we just had to back off and let everything go then. And like I said, it was unbelievably hot. And, well, guys there knows it. I mean, you know, you firefighters back there, you've been to those type of fires. That, it's just, in other words, it's just unbelievable how much lumber and trucks and gas you can pile up and burn at one time and how close you can get to it. And nobody brought any weenies either to roast. We had, Channel 6 News got in our way a little bit with their TV cameras. Across, right on the back side of this big building was the saw room. All of them thought it started in the saw room, and that's where they started their investigation. Channel 6 somehow got past the lines and got right in behind them with a TV camera. And that time of morning, I was getting flustered, wore out, tired, and when I got through yelling and screaming at their camera crew, they were trying to find a hole in the fence to get back out. I mean, you look at it this way, if it was arson and they jeopardized the investigation, you know, what do you got to go? But these trucks, like I said, were all parked in this building facing this way. Right off from the saw room, which wasn't a very large area, probably 15 by 20. They had one huge table saw in there. There was a fire extinguisher hanging outside the door.
Yeah.
Okay, it bulged and blew into the room, and that tipped all the investigators off that the fire had to start out here on these trucks out here in the hallway. That it didn't start inside that room because everything outside blowed into it. Eddie, you got anything to say on that? How about you, Roger? You done enough of it?
Yeah, one comment. Shortly after the initial structure started on fire, it burnt down the electric lines to supply power to the water plant.
Yeah.
So we had no extra water supply from the water plant. The only water supply was what was towers.
I don't know, you can see, later you come up and look, but here's the, in this picture is the light line coming in here. Comes across and across into the city yard. And it's right along the building. And up into the fire scene, we had spectators all over town. For a small town, I mean, it's like hollering sick on dead dogs. They were all standing under them lines and burning. It didn't take me long to tell them to get out of the way either. And they did. I mean, I couldn't believe the volunteers that tried to get in the way and help. I mean, public volunteers. But I have to hand it to the ladies of the Eudora. They come with the water supply. I don't know, I'm sure they had to make the grocery store open up. Because they brought cases of Gatorade and cases of water. And like I said, if you got over near their triage center, you had to drink something because they wouldn't let you out. So you had to learn to get a lot of orange juice or Gatorade or something. Yes?
What's the story about your nails?
Oh, okay, forgot about the good stuff. This is all that's salvaged.
Those are the remains of the depot.
This is the depot. The nails are square, and to tell you about how old they are, and this was one of the door openers, and why we never got anything from the lumberyard, I don't know, but I did. I don't know if the good stuff like the fire extinguisher and everything was took as evidence, and we didn't get it back. And this is one of the window weight sashes, holders, or, you know, what do you call it, window weights for a window. So,
From the
That-
depot? or
that's from the
from-
depot, yeah, this is all from the depot. So like I said, in the lumberyard, we didn't salvage nothing. Even though we had the big trucks over in the city shop for a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I don't know how long it was over, it seemed like a long time. Because they were still investigating and talking. They had to stay there past September 12th or 15th, something like that. So, that's about where we ended up. The value was never really, that I know of, never settled on the building, but I guess guesstimated over $600,000.
Right.
Because you take the 5 trucks, the lift trucks, the bucket, the hydraulic truck, plus the buildings, plus they were all loaded with material. I could not believe how much wood, lumber, plywood, paneling was in those buildings. This was the trim shop here, and it was open, because when that gas tank blew, it just took that little building with it. Because it was an open building with all wood trim, the doors and the windows in there. The little building here in the corner of that tree was a insulation building. It was a very, very old building, probably built at the same time the original buildings were. And, somebody, hello, but anyway, we lost that building too as far as that went, because it was just, like I said, we went to that defensive mode just to stop it and hold it in the area.
So what is on the property now that we've got? Is it just the-
Seahawk, what do you call that, Roger? What do they call those? They put out the traffic cones
Oh.
and everything like
What
that.
kind of storage?
Well, no, it's Seahawk has it. This
Signs.
building here was, this been built back here at that time. They were just using that for, different trim buildings. That, they turned into their office. They didn't have no telephones or nothing there. They run a telephone line down the ditch to right here's a gate. They went under to the tubing with the telephone line, and then back up the fence line and hooked into that building so I could have service the next morning, or after that, was a holiday weekend. But the phone company had to, they run it down the ditch, through the tube and back up, because they wasn't gonna run it over to that building. And they used that for their office for quite a while, until everything was settled, several months.
This was one of the largest lumberyards in the area, had quite an inventory,
Oh, God.
unlike, before Home Depot and all those came in there. This was the big lumberyard in the area, biggest probably within
Well,
30 miles, and it all went up in smoke, all at one time.
these 4 or 5 trucks, they, let's back up a little bit, right in the corner of this building, they made a room, I don't know, they done their architectural work, and he had all of those trucks loaded with houses. All 5 of them went out with a house on them. So they made their rafters, their floor joists, their windows, their doors, loaded on them trucks. Like I said, when they went out the door, somebody had a whole house. And that's what burnt on them trucks. And they had roofing, this lift truck they had, that had beams on it. It was loaded with roofing and everything. So like I said, when you thought you had it cornered, or was getting it cornered, all heck breaks loose in a hurry. So that's the story of the volunteers. Yes.
How did this change firefighting in Eudora?
I come to the city council meeting a couple of weeks later. I had to make a report right here. Walked up to the counter, and the mayor at that time looked at me and said, "You're not getting a new truck. You're not getting any new equipment. What have you got to say?" I said, "We lost 2 pieces of hose and a couple of pair of gloves." He said, "Okay, thank you." But since then, we started buying matching hose to the city of Lawrence. They went to 5-inch hose. The lead truck we had, we loaded it with 5-inch hose to match. So if we ever had a problem again, we could make sure that we had the same amount of everything. Sort of maybe a copycat after the situation, but at the time, that's what we observed was going. We had to start updating in that manner. As far as more trucks and more stuff we did not get.
Did it lead to more training?
No, you can't train much more and then go the wrong direction at the fire scene. And by the way, I'm certified, or was certified through KU University to train anywhere in the state of Kansas at that time. So I think we were trained well enough, but when you go into the defensive mode, there's nothing else you can do besides just try to squirt water. I did hear afterwards that Mr. Kazmaier was somewhat disappointed. Unbeknownst to me at that time, he was on the original Eudora Fire Department, and I did not let him run the aerial gun. He wanted to run it. And I did not even know it at the time. But later on, much later, Roger looked up a lot of information here lately on it, that he was one of the original firefighters at Eudora. And the fire station was right under here, in a little house. A lot of people remember that.
Did the
That's
trucks
another
fit in there?
story to get in on that one.
Did the trucks fit in there?
You call a pickup truck with a soda ash tank on it as a fire truck? Yes, it fit in there. I mean, barely.
They bought a new fire truck that wouldn't fit in it.
Yeah.
Then they had to build a new fire station.
That's why we built that station. They bought a truck that wouldn't fit in the whole.
What year was that other station that one that happened?
65, thereabout, 66. Because like I said, I became a member in 65. And the station was getting completed then. But I remember running trucks out of this basement. And we had American La France. And you know this long hill? That's a lifesaver.
In a hurry?
You pushed it out, you got it going down the hill, and got started. And then you rode to where you're going. It was a nice big truck. Didn't have a cab on it. It wasn't the old style, you know, the old films. But it was a good truck, dual everything on it. Boy, once you got it going, you had everything. But you just had to worry about making sure the dual batteries were set up and going. Yes.
When we first moved here in '76, we lived just across the street from, well, near here. And we saw the truck, big truck coming up Main Street.
Yeah.
Going, oh Lord, what have we done?
I still have to say, the city owes a lot to the late Pete Lawson. He took over fire chief in 52 to 79. He fought a lot of fires with with a 2.5 gallon bucket and a piece of burlap bag. I mean, you know, the city fathers did not understand fire service, you know, let alone anybody else. Because most of the guys were businessmen in town, and that was about it. I remember early on, for training, they would take a big hose, hook it onto this hydrant out here, and wash Main Street. That was part of the training. Once they broke out several of the plate glass windows, they decided it was not worth it. They had to train their training mode. Because if you've ever been hit with a water hose of that capacity, plate glass windows like tearing up a piece of tissue paper. And that got costly for a little city that didn't have nothing in their budget to cover it. So original budget was probably $350 a year. A year. That did not on gasoline. And that was about the size of it. Got paid $1.50 for a fire. That didn't pay for washing your clothes. But you sure enjoyed it. My first training was right where the gate is, or road that goes into the city shop area. There was several houses along there. The city bought to expand. Well, the state come down with their training class and we burnt them. And I was a rookie, green, I'm still green, still rookie. The instructor took me and we went in there. He literally put my face down into the slop and the mud on the floor and said, go get it. Well, that opened my eyes to a lot of firefighting. You end up with, you come out looking like you've been drugged through a rat hole backwards. But anyway, he did make a point that, hey, you're going to learn to do it, you do it right. Does that confuse everybody?
It's not for sissies.
Oh. Well, thank you, Kylie. I appreciate your time. And